Alright, in this video we are going to see how to create this student course dashboard. So what it does is it will allow me to add new student and add the new student with the courses that we have already available. So this, consider this as a institute where you have number of students who has come for the courses that you have. Let's say a student named Suresh comes, and I'm adding his number and phone, Suresh, and some random phone number, and if I click on save, you see in the student table Suresh has got added. Now student is in the reception room and ask for a course called MERN-style, and I would be enrolling him into the MERN-style. And I'm saying the course duration is 5 months and I'm taking the fees of 60,000. And for MERN-style, who has come? For MERN-style, Suresh has come. If I click on save course, you'll see MERN-style on the course on the courses table. You'll see for the MERN-style we have Suresh. Along with these two CRUD operation or these two module, we have one more thing, which is the dashboard module. So here the total student for this institute is 5 and total number of courses that we have is 6, and the revenue so far we have generated is based on the fees calculation. You will see this data would get populated, and the most popular course right now is MERN-style. So now here we are going to build 3 API. One API is for student, another API is for courses, and the third API is for the dashboard. Let me just show you the code. So in the controller, you see we have 3 controllers, so that means we are going to create 3 API. Now we are going to create everything from scratch. We will be completely building this folder structure from scratch. I would be using AI suggestion, and if you don't want AI suggestion, we have already 2 videos in the playlist where we won't be using any AI suggestion. We will be creating everything from scratch, line by line, and to speed up we are using AI suggestion for this video. And the most important thing that we are going to learn is populate function, and the other thing is group. So here the important thing that we are going to learn is group. Let's say here this is our table, and in this table we want to understand, or we want to know we want to know the total number of fees, not total number of fees, the sum of all the fees. So that is one question. The second question is which is the most popular course. So here the most popular courses from our glance we can say MERN-style is the most popular course. How are we going to get it? With the help of MongoDB. So MongoDB has a tool called aggregate, which will allow us to do some functions like sum. So here we would be calculating the fees, the sum would work here, and again we would be calculating the total number of the most famous courses. Here in this case it's MERN-style. We'll be using aggregate, and aggregate has a special tool which is group. So what it will do is it will create bucket. We'll get this into detail once this particular section has come, but consider this as an introduction. MongoDB uses a tool called aggregate, and aggregate will help you to create buckets. So what do I mean by buckets is, so we have a course. Consider we have courses, we have students, and let's just pick only the courses. Now I want to know which course is the popular. So courses, let's say we have only 3 courses: video editing, social media marketing, and MERN-style. So we would be creating 3 buckets. When I say buckets, it's nothing but a fancy term for group. So 3 groups will be created, and we have to say what type of group that we need, how we want to make that group. So I would be saying use the aggregate tool. Inside aggregate tool we have a group function, and group them by course name. So now we have 3 buckets for the course name. Similarly for student, I'm saying I want to know which student has enrolled most of the course. So for that I would be saying use the aggregate tool and group them by student name. Now the student name would be in the form of buckets, and in the buckets we would have course name. So by counting the course name, we would know which student is most enrolled with the help of aggregate tool. It looks from theory point of view it looks little complicated, but when it comes to code it's really very easy. I'll just give you a glance of what this code will actually look like in the controller. So now I need the total fees. So what I'm doing is I'm picking this database. Here in this case we'll call collection. I'm picking this collection, which is course collection, and I'm saying this group by I don't want to group them by bucket now. In this case I want to consider all these as one group, so that's why I'm passing null, and I'm saying I need the sum of all the fees, the sum of the fees. So this is the value which hold the total number of which will hold the actual value, and this is the function that I'm talking about. Sum, average, minimum, maximum will come here. Similarly, talking about this who is the most, which course is the most famous one, again we will be using the this course table, and we will be grouping by courses. So now let's say we have 3 popular courses, we would have 3 buckets, and with this 3 buckets I'm saying which bucket is more. So let's say out of these courses, the what you see here is MERN-stack is at MERN-stack you can see there is 3 appearance, and rest of them has 1 appearance. So here in this case what we'll do is MERN-stack will have 3 students. So here MERN-stack will be 3, and aggregation is like a aggregation tool acts as a pipeline, which is step by step. So first it will execute group, second it will execute the sorting, and the third it will execute the limit. So here this function is an array. Since we have only one value, we can access it by index 0, and with this array we have 2 functions, 2 key value pair. Now we get to know which is the most famous course by this ID, because we are making a group or a bucket with the course name, and total number of student, how many appearance are there. So MERN-stack comes as, I need to refresh this, MERN-stack comes as 3 appearance. So we got the answer for what we were looking for. We have divided the course by bucket, and in the MERN-stack bucket there are 3 students, and in the video editing, in the social media marketing, there are 1 each. Now the second function what it will do is it will sort them by descending order. Now MERN-stack has 3, video editing has 1, social media has 1, and we are saying just get the first value only. Since we are getting only the first value, only the MERN-stack gets displayed. So this is the introduction, and we'll dive deep about aggregate tool along with 3 API. Without wasting time, let's jump into the code. Alright, now let's work on creating the folder structure first. Now let's create a empty folder on the desktop. So here I'm going to create a empty folder, let's say open folder. In the desktop I'll create a new folder and call it as students, and select folder. Over here I'll press Control backtick to open the terminal. Now in this terminal I have to initialize npm, so I'll just type npm init, which will add package.json file on my folder, and here you just have to give a default s to all. Once it's made, you can see a package.json appears on the screen. this is the place where you will see all the installed package information. Let's install Node.js Express, Mongoose and .env. So this is enough to create a basic CRUD. It's loading. Once it's downloaded, you will see those things, those packages with the version number would get added as a dependency on the package.json. So you can see as a dependency, you can see Node.js Express, Mongoose and .env and Node.js. So these are the latest version numbers of the package. Next thing what we have to do is we have to create an entry point. So let's make the entry point as server.js, create a new file and call it as server.js. Now to run a server we need Express. Let's create the instance of Express. Then we need an instance of app. With this app you can create the server by calling the function listen. The first parameter is port number and the second parameter is the callback function that says what should happen when your server runs. So let's run our server.js file, server.js. You will see a simple message saying that server is running on port. So what if when I search for localhost :3000 I want to get a request? So in that case I'll call the app instance and create a basic route. The route would be get method and it would simply say hello world. So when I hit again you won't see any changes because we have to restart the server to see the changes. npm node server.js. It's not noder, it's node. And now you would see the server is running and you can see the changes. Each time we don't have to kill the server and restart the server. So for that we already have a package installed which is Node.js, and here I say when I type npm run dev, I want the command to get executed, which is previously we were using node server.js, node space server.js. Now we'll be typing node.js server.js. So let's close the server. So kill the server, npm run dev. So when I hit npm run dev, the code node.js server.js would get executed, and each time I press Ctrl S, you'll see the screen text. It says restarting the server due to changes, and it starts the server. So I don't have to write I don't have to check the browser. To check the browser I need to kill the server. I don't have to do that over and over again to see the changes. Instead what I'll just do is I'll just press Ctrl S. When I press Ctrl S, the server would get restarted again and the changes I can see it on the browser. That's the reason why we have Node.js. That's enough with the intro of Node.js. So the basic server.js should follow a pattern. So it would have config folder, and then after config it will have connection related code, and then after connection it will have middleware related code, and after middleware it will have routes related code, and after routes it will have server related code. So this is server, this is no routes related code. So let's now let's just jump into the other part, which is click on new file and we will create .env file, which is the place where we'll store all our important credentials. For this, for just for easy understanding, I'm importing the variable port from the .env file to the server.js. To do that we need a package called .env, and we'll create the instance of .env, and with this we need to call the config function. Now instead of directly passing the port number, we can call process.env.port. Now to check whether it's running or not, we'll just concatenate with the console. If I press Ctrl S, you see the port is running on 3000, it shows up. So that means we are able to properly call the env variable, environment variable, into our server.js just by calling the instance of .env and using the config function. I believe that is enough. The next thing, we will look for the database connection. When we talk about MVC pattern, we need to focus on one thing. We need to create a new folder, and this folder will have database connection related code. And here what I will have is, whenever we are going to connect our application with the MongoDB, what we have to do is we have to connect or talk to Mongoose. So to talk to Mongoose, we need the package to get called on this particular page. So let's call the package Mongoose, and then whenever I call this db.js, this db.js will have a function called connectdb, which will be responsible for connecting your application with the Mongoose. And whenever we create a separate file, it is recommended, or it is compulsory, to export the created function. So here we have created MongoDB function and we need to export it. So to export, we'll use module.export console connectdb. Now whenever we connect our application to MongoDB, and we would be using a function, and that function should always be asynchronous function. And whenever there is asynchronous function, or it's recommended to surround them with try and catch block. In case if there is any other error, we can easily display them. Console.log. And now mongoose.connect, and as a parameter we'll be getting the URL from the .env. So let me copy it from my previously created code, and where it is, env, copy this and paste it. I have not created the database yet, but I have connected my username and password. So this username and password has to be secret, so that's why we are placing it in .env. I'm showing this because when after completing this video, what I'll do is I'll just simply reset my password. That's the reason why I'm showing it to everyone, but it's not recommended to show it to everyone. Now we need to store this data, so let's create a database, and we will call it as course db, or you can simply name it as student db. Students can be the default collection name, or the collection we will be creating students and courses db in this course, but assume that for now students is there. And then we have our student db, so in place of user db we'll just rename it with student db. So once this is done, then what we have to do is we can call this URL, which is in .env, process.env dot the URL, and if everything goes well, it has to be await, let's just display in the console saying that DB connected, MongoDB connected. Now we need to call this into our server.js. So to call, we can simply call with the path inside config folder. We have database.js. Now the connection related code should come inside here, and if I restart the server again, Control S, you'll see database is also connected, and then our server is also connected. Now what we have to do is, let's work on HTML file. Let's create a new HTML file and we'll call it as public folder, and inside public folder we will have index.html, style.css and script.js. And then a new file, script.js. Over here let's just write a basic HTML and we'll display h1 hello from head HTML. Now what we have to do is, in the server.js, instead of sending response as a text, what we will do is we'll send the HTML file itself. Now here, to call the HTML file, we need a module called path, and this path will have a function called join, which will accept some parameter. The first parameter is the absolute URL, which we can access by the directory name, and the second one is the folder name, public folder, and the third one is the HTML file that you want to send as a response. So when I hit localhost :3000, we'll get the HTML as a response. Now this HTML will, let me just explain you with the style sheet. Let's just make the background color as red, and let's just link this style.css, and if you refresh, it won't get changed, or the CSS will not get attached with the HTML. The reason is we are only sending the HTML, not the supporting files. Now what we are going to say to the application is, when we are sending the response, HTML response, I want to pick all the related CSS and JS from a particular folder. How are we going to say to our application? We need to create a middleware. So whenever we create a middleware, this is how to identify what is middleware. app.use, and with this we need to call a middleware which is express.static, and everything else is going to be same from here. We need to call the path so that we can get the absolute URL, and we need to specify which folder to pick from, but we don't have to say what file it is. Now if I refresh, your CSS would get attached to the HTML. So that's a simple explanation. We don't need this. Refresh it, and just to check whether we are able to link the script tag also, script.js, it's already there. We just have to test it with alert hello. If I refresh it, your HTML should say alert, and that also works. So our HTML and CSS are properly connected with our HTML. That's because of this middleware express.static. Now we need to understand model views and controller. Let's start with views. So over here, what we'll do is we'll create a new folder and we will call it as routes, and in this routes we'll create one file and we'll call it as student routes.js. R can be capital, it's up to you, you can name it anything. And over here we need to call express, and with this express we need to call router, and we need to connect our router with some request. In this case, let's pick the get request, and we need to export the router module.export router. Now this isn't enough, you have to initialize it on the entry point as well. So this is going to be a middleware app.use, and whenever someone search localhost colon 3000 slash student, I want the routes to get called. So to call the router, we'll just connect it with user routes, and it's inside routes folder, student routes. It's not user, it's student. Now we'll just send the request to the user routes. So whenever someone search for localhost colon 3000 slash students, which is what we have defined here, we need to get the request from here. So we don't need this. Now you will see get all students. So this isn't the right way. We have to send this request to the controller, and the controller will talk to the model, and the model will send the response back. That's how the process should be. So let's create a controller folder now. Inside controller folder we need to create student controller.js. It will simply export a file called get all students, and whatever we wrote the response. So in short, the request would be sent to the controller, and the controller will send the response. This time we need to call the controller here, const student controller. Make sure the path is right. Now inside student controller we have a function called get all user that is going to take care of your get request. Now when I hit, so you can see get all student from controller. You can make this from controller. Now you should see the response is coming from controller. How I am saying it, because when I hit slash students, it will get into middleware says look for the routes folder, and it will get into the routes folder, and route says get into the controller and find this function. So I'm getting into the controller, I'm finding this function, and the response is sent through this code response.send, and we are displaying it over here. That's how the MVC pattern works in MERN. Now the next thing is, let's create a schema for the student. So for the student we need full name, email, and phone number. So we need a class called model, folder called model. No, it should not be inside controller, it should be at the top level folder, controller. Oh, I'm sorry, it's model. Inside model we need student model.js. Over here we need to call Mongoose. Let's create an instance of Mongoose, const Mongoose. Now what we need to create a schema. Let's say student schema, what all thing it should have. It should have name, it should be of type string and required true, and then we need phone number, we need email address. We'll take this as email and let this be phone. It can be of type number. Now we need to attach our schema with the database. To do that we need to do, let's just export first, export student, and this is the collection name that we have created, and this is the schema that we are attaching to that collection. Now this is enough. Your model is ready to interact with your MongoDB. Now let's import the HTML. So right now when I search for localhost :3000, hello from HTML shows up. We don't want that, or else let's keep it as it is, but we will change the HTML of this. I press Ctrl U, copy the whole thing and paste it, and I hope I have written the CSS internally. Let's remove those and place it into a new file. Going to the top, cut, Ctrl S, paste, Ctrl S. Now if I refresh localhost /3000, you should see the dashboard screen. So this is a static HTML, you don't have to worry much about it. Let's focus on this input field first. So what should happen? When I click on save user, I need to get these input field value and store it into an object and send the object to the server. That's how we are going to work on. So let's create the script tag, and let's check the HTML first. We don't have to worry about this for now. We don't need this. I don't need this file as well. So let's work on only student model. Student model is also not required. Now let's try formatting this. We have a form with ID user form, then we have a class username, class email, class phone, and input type submit. That's enough. Now let's call this form in the script tag. So let's create a constant variable and document dot, let this be ID. Yes, it's ID. And then what we need to get the individual input field value. We'll start with username, query selector, and we'll store it as inside input value. The second one is email, and store it inside input email input. Phone input. Now with this, when I click on submit, I need an event to get fired, and that event is submit. By default, what happens is the page would get reloaded. I don't want that, so e.prevent default will stop the page from reloading, and let's create a new variable called form data, and inside form data we need to store username, email, and phone, and let's just check whether we are able to console log the form data. Refresh this page and right click, inspect, and on the inspect get into the console tab. Let's try some random value. Press save. It says it should be an email.com. The page is getting reloaded. This should not be the case. Let's see the HTML. Yes, it is ID. It is properly getting called over here. And make sure your script is loaded in the HTML body just before where it ends. So script src script.js. Let's try adding values. Click on save. Cannot read properties of value. I believe I have given query selector, but I didn't give the class. We will identify class with having dot in the as a prefix. Click on save. Now we are able to properly gather this input field value and store it into a form. The next thing is we have to send it to the server. So let's create a constant variable and call it as endpoint. So this is our endpoint, and we'll use the fetch and send the data to the endpoint. It accepts some three methods, it asks three questions. The first thing is what type of method you are sending. I am sending post, and what type of data you are sending. I'm saying I'm sending JSON data to the server, and what data you are sending, I'm sending the object, and this object has to be converted into JSON. That's why JSON.stringify. You cannot send your JavaScript object to the server. Instead you have to convert it to JSON, and to convert your JavaScript object into JSON we will be using JSON.stringify. Now once this is done, let's just see whether we are able to send the value to the server or not. You need to get into network and type some value to check. Click on save, and you see you are able to send the request. If I click it, you'll see on the payload we are sending email, phone and username. Now one thing that we have to check it, in the model we have just given name, we'll replace it with username, so that's for our easy understanding, so that we won't get confused when we send this data to the model. Now we need to accept the request from the server end. So for that you need to get into routes, because all the student related queries is handled by this routes. We don't have post request. Since we are sending post request through the form, we'll say create student, and now this function will take care of the response. So call this function and we will just send the response request.body. Now you see now to make this work, there is one more middleware that we have to include, which is express.json. That is only when you send your JavaScript object to the server will send the we need to convert the JavaScript object into JSON first, and JSON is sent to the server, and server sends the response back it will be in the JSON form. Now your browser won't be able to identify the JSON. In that case, what your browser will do is, or in that case, what your browser will do is, your browser will simply convert the JSON value into JavaScript object. So that is done with JSON.parse. We have seen JSON.stringify, and there is one more function called JSON.parse. We won't be explicitly using JSON.parse when receiving the data. In that case, what we will do is, we'll give it to the Node application that it will take care of JSON.parse and the other operations. So that's the reason why we use Express.json. Now if I refresh, look for the send them to the server. Let's see what server gave response. Server gave the response by whatever I receive the request, I'm just sending it back. Now we are able to receive the now we are able to properly receive the data from the form. Now we will store these form data inside our database. So we need to create a const, so we will call it as student, and we would require the student model. Now this is the database operation, so it has to be async, and we need to create an object. Let's just name it as form data as it is, username, email and phone. Now we need to send this form data to this object, so we need to create new student and pass the form data, and we can save this. But before saving, we have to make it await, and if everything goes smooth, we need to send the response. We can set the status as 201, because whenever we create a new resource, the status should be 201. It's up to you, can give any status, but this is the standard way. And then we need to send the JSON value. It will just have a message as student created successfully, and that's it. So if we receive the data student created successfully, that means your database got populated with the form data. Click on save. Let's wait. Yeah, we have received 500. Student is not a constructor. Student, whether we are able to properly pull student model.js student model. So there is one problem in our models, so we can make it as module.exports. Let's try again. Fill this value, click on save. Again there is an issue, my bad, syntax error. Click on save, and you see the resource got created, and we got the message saying that student created successfully. Now we are able to send the response to the browser. Now we need to display it in the browser. The best way is we'll use the then. Once we receive the response, this response is in JSON. We have to convert it back to the JavaScript object dot JSON, and then we will be able to get the message. And we will display in the alert. So it's a key value pair because it's a object type. Let's try. If everything goes well, we should get the alert. Let's try a different name, john@gmail.com, some value, and click on save. Okay, but we have not received, cannot read properties of, so it's not able to read it at all. Let's see why. One simple thing is we have missed a return ron@gmail.com 5 6 7 8 9 10. Click on save, and yes, student created successfully. Now we are able to send the form data to the server, and server stored into the database, and once it stores, it receives the response, and the response we are able to display it as an alert. Now once we receive, I want the form data to get resetted. So now you see these value are simply stays. I want to reset it, and on page load I want to display all students. So let's create this function. This function will simply send a get request to the browser. So to send get request, we'll just send the call the endpoint. So yeah, call the endpoint, and we don't do anything. So on page refresh, in the network tab, you should see a request being sent. So let's call it over here. On page refresh, you see student request is sent, and we are getting the response from the, you see the get request already has get all student, and get all student is simply displaying the text, response text. We don't need that, we need complete. So we'll use student.find. It's an async, and we have to wait, and we need to store it const all students. Now what we have to do is we need to send this as a response. If I refresh and click on students, and we are getting the response, and these are in the form of objects. Now we can access these all student in the JavaScript over here, and we'll call it as data because we are getting multiple value, and we will console.log it. On page refresh, you should see all the value getting fetched and getting displayed into the log. Now we need to run a for each, because it's a collection of objects, and we will try to display it one after the other. Console log data, let's try. Now it's collection. Now you should see on page refresh, you should see datas.fetch. It's to array. So now you see we are able to display it one by one. Now what we will do is we'll call the t body, which is where your HTML is loading. So over here, users, let's type all register. Yeah, it's here. We already have a user table. Let's call the user table. T body, user table t body, and what we would do is tbody dot inner html. We will simply get the html from here, this tr, and we will display it over here. Now we can replace this dollar, its data dot username. Similarly for email, similarly for phone, and that actually it. And before that, before the fetch, I want this to be cleared with nothing. Refresh. Something dot inner html, user table tbody, it's not class, it's id. Cool, all the data got displayed. Now in the button, what we can do is we'll just create a on click event, and it will have delete data, and we need to pass the id, because each object will have a unique id, and that we can access it with the help of underscore id. Now if I refresh it and check the button has a id. Now we can, when I click on this delete button, I need to pass the id to the server, and you can simply call endpoint. And what data are we sending? Header, JSON, and the id. What we can do is we need to send the delete id as a object. So this is key, and this is the value that we receive as a parameter. Now we are sending the delete id. Now we need to create a method for that, and the method is delete. It's delete student, and we need to call a function. Now this is the function that is responsible, find by id and delete. We need to get the id, so what we do is delete id equal to request.body.id. So find by id and delete, we need to pass the delete id, and we need to send a message saying that deleted successfully. If everything goes smooth, we should get this response, and we need to properly capture the response like how we have done here. And also it should call fetch get array, sorry, fetch request. It should it should send the fetch request to the server, so that it captures all the student data and displays once you click on delete. Let's click this, make sure student deleted successfully. Okay, and it's not working. If I refresh, Yes, it's gone, but the problem is I think this is getting executed first. I found one mistake. It's a copy. While copying, I have mistakenly copied the whole line. Another thing is the function mismatch. So if I try to delete Vishal and see it's gone, if I try to delete Ron is also gone. Alright, let us continue from where we left off yesterday. First thing, we have to load the drop down in the courses section. Just as we have created the user, that user can be added in this drop down. So let's do that. We need to create one thing, which is fetch. Now let's create a function. We can name this function as Populate dropdown. And over here, let's just fetch. Let's just send the fetch request to an endpoint. We have named this. Actually, what we do is we'll take this function at the top, and after this fetch function, what we need is let's just check whether we are able to send the fetch request on the console. So I have called it just below it, you can see. So it will make sure that our fetch request is sent on page load. Refresh your page. So I think we have sent 2 requests out of 2. One is our drop down, and to differentiate, what we can do is then we can use then, and we can drop the console. We'll test the message whether we are able to get console.log data. So if we are able to see the console, that means we are able to fetch the data properly. Now let's just add one more doctor with my name, some random phone number. Click on save, and in the console, when I refresh, you should see 2 data. That means it's working as we thought. Now let's just get the drop down HTML. So let's get into the HTML. We need to find where the drop down is. It's over here. It is differentiated with the ID, so we can use query selector and use the ID. So this is select tag, and what we do is we will simply populate the select tag. Now we need to use for each because it's not one value, it's multiple value. Now we can use this select tag and manipulate the inner HTML with the option tag, and we would be passing in the value parameter only the ID, and in the name we'll be passing the username. Let's refresh and check. In the select user, actually it's not working because cannot read properties of, I believe it's an ID. We have used it as class. If I refresh it, you should see the data got populated properly. Now the thing is, if I add one more time, so before fetching, we have to make this as blank or just add the select user. Let's try adding one more. Also, this function has to be called once a new doctor is created and after it got deleted. So let's try adding one more doctor. Once I add, I want the, sorry, not doctor, the student has to be visible on this table. Also the student has to be visible on this drop down. So let's add one more student and we'll call it as ron at gmail.com with some phone number, and click on save, and it says student created successfully. The student has appeared on the table. Also on the drop down you should see ron. Cool. So that's how we populate the drop down. Now the next thing that we have to focus on is creating the CRUD for the, or you can say creating a module for the courses. So to create the module for courses, first thing we have to look for model, and let's create a schema and we'll call it as course model.js. In the course model.js we will be creating an instance of Mongoose, and we'll be creating course schema, and in the course schema what all things that we need course name, we can simply make it as type string required true. You can remove this required true, it's not required. Then what all things we have like duration, then we have course fee, then we have a reference for the student. So this is duration, it can be number, and then we have fees, again it can be number, and then we have student ID. This has to be Mongoose schema ObjectId. Actually it acts as a foreign key. The primary key is available on the student model and it's foreign key now. Now once everything is set, you have to export the model, and this is the collection that would be created, and the collection has to follow this course schema, and we are exporting it. So our model is done. The next thing that we have to focus on is to create the routes. Now in the server we know, let's just create the routes first and create a new file. We'll call it as course routes.js. In the course routes.js, what all things that we need Express. Express has router, so let's call Express, and Express has router, and then we have to export the router, module.export router. Then inside with this router we can take care of what all methods that we are going to deal with. So also this router will talk to controller. We need to create a controller as well, and we will call it as course controller.js. In the course controller.js we don't have to do anything, but this course routes will talk to we have to import the course controller. So const course controller, make sure the path is set right. Now this course controller has a function get all courses, just as we have done earlier for the student, and here we have to export that function, and we need to simply say console course controller is working. Okay, now what we have to do, not console.log, response.send controller is working. Now what we have to do to check, register that in the courses, and then we need to call the routes here, course routes, and we have to link it properly. So whenever I hit courses, I should get the response from the server if everything goes well. What will happen is, when I search for courses, user routes says when there is a get request with the localhost :3000/courses, then get into the course controller. Make sure the controller is linked properly. Course controller, yes, and in the course controller we are calling the, inside course controller we are calling this function. Make sure this function is proper, because now it's not proper. That's the reason why it didn't load it, and you can see that in the error, as in the error in the terminal, that it shows error, and again it shows error, and it says what argument must be a function, maybe in the routes. Yes, it says it's connected. Let's try refreshing it, and you should see that get request is working fine. Now that shows that our routes and our controller are working fine. Now we can work on the courses module. Let's create the post. Let's just go step by step. We don't need student for now. We'll focus on courses module now. Now we need to call the course form. Where is the course form? Course form is over here. We can use course form, and when I submit the course form, I want to collect all the form data. Let's collect. For that we have to get all the input field value. So we have course name, we have duration, we have fees, and we have select field value. We have to initialize these input field over here. So let's just fix this. How many we have? We have 4. So 1 2 3 4. So this is for course name, then this is for duration, then we have fees input field, and the select field. To differentiate, we can use input. That will differentiate our class with the. Now we have course name, duration, fees, and student ID. And let's make sure all the values are correct. Also, it should be similar to what we have added here for consistency. Cool. And what should happen? We have to send this request to the endpoint, which is courses, and we can set it as courses endpoint. fetch courses endpoint, and what type of method, it's post method, what type of header, it's JSON, what content type is header, and what data are we sending, it's form data. And if I click, so let's just see on the console whether we are able to send the request to the server. So it's React JS course, and the duration is 6 months, or just say 6, and fees is like 50,000. And John has come, and we are enrolling him now. So if I click on save, I think there is an error. So it says cannot read properties of value of what. Okay, so this student ID value is, it is not able to fetch. It says it's not able to fetch student ID value. So we are passing the ID properly. Actually it's ID, not a class. That's the only mistake. Network some random value, doesn't matter for now, because we are just sending the request, it won't get saved. And you see, we are able to send the request with all the data, course name, duration, fees, and now it's not able to recognize the post method, because in the routes we have not defined the post. And we'll say create courses. Actually we are not creating courses, we are enrolling the course. So now that we are able to send the enroll student, we can make this as enroll students. Now we have to call this function the controller. Now to make this work, we have to, because we are going to send or save our data into what, into the database, so we need a Mongoose. No, we don't need Mongoose, we need a model. And make sure the spelling is right. We have created model, and inside we have course model, and with this we can, now we need to get all the value and make sure everything is right. Let's just try sending random value. Click on save course, and over here we are sending course name, duration, fees, and student ID. Now we need to do what? We need to we are going to create a new enrollment, and over to this we will pass the object. So instead you can pass it this way. Then we need to save this enrollment, and once it's saved we can send the response saying that student enrolled successfully. Refresh it. It's down because, oh wait, this has to be async, because whenever we talk to database, that function has to be async. Now if I send the value, so React JS course, 6-month course, fees is 50,000, and the user got enrolled as John. Click on save course. Now when I click here, you should get the response student enrolled successfully. That means it worked. So that's done now. The second thing is we have to display these value over here. So instead, when I get the response, we can simply set it in the alert. Now display now we have to create this function and send the get request. Just as we have done earlier, we need to get the table, and let's just fix the get request and call the course dot find. And now here comes the part of populate. I'll just show you what populate does. Is before that, I'll just send you the status, or we have to store it somewhere, and we'll call it as all enrollment. And when I so let's just call this fetch request. Where is the fetch request? In the script, let's just call the fetch request on page load also, so that we understand what really happens. Now student enrollment, there seems to be an error, console error. There seems to be a extra curly brace. This is set. Cool. Now on network, courses, response. The thing that you have to focus on is we are getting the student ID. What data that we have passed, we are getting it over here. So let me just pass one more, which is one stack 6-month course 35,000, and Vishal is the student that I am selecting, and student enrolled successfully. Now on page load, you should see 2 students, but both of them in the student ID we have what? We have ID. Now I don't need ID, I need the student data in place of ID. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll call this populate function, and what is our foreign key? Student ID. And what all data I need username, email and phone. Save it, and if I refresh it, now again the fetch request is sent. Now you will see in place of ID you will get these values, which is actually there on the student table. So that's the power of populate function. It fetches the required data from another table with the ID that we have passed. So this is the ID. This will act as a foreign key, and the primary key is one. Where is that? The primary key is available for each row, and with the reference to the student, it is able to fetch all the username, email and phone value. That is what you see here: username, email and phone value. The ID is automatically generated by MongoDB. Cool. Now we are able to fetch it. Now it's time to just display it. Just as we display the table, we have to see where the table is. So this is user table which we have seen, and this is courses table. we have to select this table. Where is tbody? We have already used it one. We'll just make a clone of it, and over here simply we'll use the tbody, and to populate this, in the courses you will find, you can select these tbody and just place it over here. And what all data that we have, we are getting data dot username or course name, likewise this is duration, then we have student name, then we have fees, we can skip delete for now, then we have fees. The student name can be fetched with this student id dot student name, and before fetch request clear the table, refresh it. On page load you should see, and if that feels very empty you can make it as months, 6 months. Cool. Now we are able to insert the value. So now when I click wherever we have called after student gets added, we want to populate the courses table as well. Similarly, wherever it is, so this 3 has to be common, cause let's just fix these 3 codes and add wherever required. So the reason is, if I add a student and click on save, some of the table, so in three places, like in student and in courses and in drop down, these 3 places has to be populated. That's why. So let's try adding one student and call it Michael, and email address michael@gmail.com, phone number, click on save. Once I click on save, it got populated. Cool. Also you should see Michael over here. Yes, that is also populated. Now if I create a course called video editing, and the duration is 3 months, fees is 50,000, and the student is Michael. If I click on save, we got the response and it should get populated over here. Video editing course is there, and yes, Michael got enrolled. Cool. Now let's work on this dashboard API. So here we would understand how to query MongoDB. Now we need routes, and that would be only for dashboard routes, and let's create a new file, dashboard routes.js, and over here what all things that we need, and we need dashboard controller as well. And in the dashboard controller we need to call course model. Also we need student model. Cool. And what else we need? So when let's just fix the routes. Here we need express. Then we need router. We need to export module.export router. Also let's set the router. Whenever I hit get request, it should immediately go and call the controller, dashboard controller, and dashboard controller has a function get dashboard data. Now this get dashboard data we will define and when I hit, let's just send response slash dashboard localhost :3000 slash dashboard, click enter. If there is no error, I think we got the error, so let's just debug it. When I click dashboard, yes, dashboard is not called here, dashboard routes. Yes, now you should see the data, the response from the dashboard API. So in the control, what are the things that we need first? We need total student. Now to get the total student, const total student response dot send total student, and let's see, we got 4 student. 1 2 3, actually we have 3 only, but it says 4. Actually this is the student list, and similarly we want to send one more, which is total courses. So we would be sending only one, or we can send it as objects, because the send will expect objects. We got 4 and total 3. Now it's time for the total revenue. Now to calculate, so what this count document will do is it will just simply count the number of objects in your collection. So it's 4 here, it's 3 here, that's why it's 3 and 4. So let me add one course, and we'll call it as social media marketing, and the course duration is 2 months, fees is 20,000, and the user that we are going to select is Ron. Click on save course. Now the total student will be, sorry, the courses would be 4. Now it's 4 and 4. So as I populate, you will see the API also has the live data. Now what? Now we need to find the revenue for this particular institute. So total revenue is, so it has to be the count of these. Now let's create a total revenue. Now we need to create an aggregate function. Aggregate is nothing but, let's say you want a group. Now the better way to make you understand is I'll just open a canvas and let you understand what I meant. Consider so let's say we have courses C1, C2 and C3. C1, C2, C3. I don't have a mouse. So consider we have three courses and we have student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4. So C1 is here, C2 is here, again C3 is here, student 3 has course 1, student 4 has course 1. Now what aggregate will do is, or in the aggregate is nothing but we can use sum, we can use count, we can use maximum, minimum. These values can be these functions, these aggregate value like sum, count, minimum, maximum, we can use in the aggregate function. Now what we need to do is we need to filter down, let's say how many course 1 is there, how many course 2 is there, and I need it as individual way. So let's say student 1 and student 3, student 4. So that means that there are 4 and there are only one course 2. This is how it will be grouped. Now we are going to use a group function. Now it will simply make you this way. I'll explain you right now. Now what you see here, course 1 has 4 enrollment, course 2 has 1 enrollment. So if you want to divide it in this way, so this is how, if you want to divide this in this way, course 1 has 4, course 2 has 1, so you have to group them. So group, if I use here student ID, I would get the answer as 2 buckets. I don't need as 2 buckets, I need both of them as 1 bucket. So that's why I have passed null. Now I need the total. Now this kind of bucket does not exist for this code. Consider now I need all the information, all these information, 1, 2, these information along with student has paid how much fees. So I need the fees information as well. That's why I'm saying I don't need to group by bucket. Instead consider all the document. So that's why I'm passing null, and I'm saying use the function sum. Sum means calculate all the fees and store it into a value called total. Now this aggregate function is an array. So this is the variable that holds our value. So this is an array. So in the array, since it's on the first index, that's why 0, and then get the value which is total. So you can see I'm calling the total. Now if you refresh, you see the total amount as 15,05,000. Actually it's 1,55,000. Cool, I hope that is clear. Now let's get into the popular courses. Now to know which course is popular, we need to understand. Let's just add one more MERN stack and 6-month duration, course fee again 35. You can select any user, click on save. Now we have 2 MERN stack. Now this is the place where you will be grouping. Now we need the help of two tables. One table will hold the details about courses, and the second table will hold the details about student. In this particular case, we don't have to go into two tables where all the data is actually available in one table itself. In one table itself, we need to know which course is repeated twice or thrice. So in that case, what we will do is, again we need to group them. Now to get that, what we are going to do is, we need the data from this one particular table. So MongoDB gives you a tool, and that tool is called aggregate. Whenever you want to calculate what all things, let's say average, sum, or minimum, maximum, in this cases you will use this aggregate tool. Now in this case, we wanted two things. One is the total number of user, and the other is which courses is the most popular. Now I'm going to group by the course name. So if there is multiple course with same name, it would get grouped. And now it's sort of, let me create a new document and I'll explain you now how it's going to sort. We would be getting courses 1 and courses 2 as two buckets, and let's say this is one student, sorry, this is one course, this is two course, and actually this is student. One courses has two student and the other courses has how many students, it would get displayed in this way. Now what I need, I'm grouping them as buckets. So course 1 bucket and course 2 buckets. So I'm grouping it as name. So this is MERN-style, this is video editing, and the other one whatever we have written here, social media marketing. And so let's just pick only one, which is MERN-style. First one is MERN-style, and the second one is video editing. So these got grouped based on the name. And sum one means nothing but it is a way of saying calculate the total count 1 2, let's say here, which is called video editing, has 1 2 3 4. Video editing has 4 students. So here in this case, this student value would be 4 for video editing, and for MERN-style, here for MERN-style the value of student would be 2. Now we know video editing is at the top, and the second is MERN-style. Now what the next pipeline is doing is, so this is like a pipeline, complete this, then complete step 2, then complete step 3. Now in the step 2, what it will happen is, it is going to order by descending. -1 means descending. So we know student. Now here we have created a new value, student. Here the student value is 2, and here the student value is 4. Now I'm saying order by descending order. So student 4 will come at top, and then I'm saying get only the first value. Now the order would be student 4, then there would be student 2. Now I'm saying get only the first value. So in the first value we will get the most popular course with the student. Now if I refresh, you'll see we are getting what? We are getting the most popular courses, and we have grouped them by course name. That's what we got. And then how many students that we have? Total 2 students. That's what it got displayed here. Now we have to simply populate it in the dashboard. In the HTML, we have to get into the dashboard section. We have to simply get these value, total courses, total fees, and then what? top courses. So these are IDs. Now we have to call them in the JavaScript. We have 4 such blocks, 1 2 3. We just have to replace them. This is for total user or total students. This is for total courses. Then we have total fees. Then we have top course. We need to send a fetch request to the dashboard. And this would be dashboard endpoint. We can say load dashboard. So this is for on page load. Now I'll be sending a fetch request, and I'll fill those values, and if I refresh, you see those values got populated. So these are the data that we would be getting from the total student, then get from the total courses, then total revenue, then the most popular course. Again, most popular course we have this is the key where we have total number of courses, and another key for values. Cool. I hope the scope of this video is done.